Tumblr, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the TumblrInAction podcast. Its 5-year mission: to explore strange new identities, to seek out new genders and new sexualities, to boldly go where no man has gone before.
We're here today with VorsprungOfficial.
G'day, g'day.
And oppressedshitlord.
Hello!
So, Vorsey and Mr. Shitlord were very, very kind enough to come on as our first round of guest hosts who had actually applied and got in, and let's just give them a round of applause, everybody at home listening.
Yeah, clap.
You're not clapping.
Thank you.
You're not actually clapping, but whatever. We appreciate it very much. Thank you both, gentlemen. By the way.
Cheers, man. It's no problem.
Yeah. It's kind of weird because Hat asked me for some nudes, and I'm wondering if he asked you for the application.
Yeah. I mean, I was chatting to him over Kick, and it got a bit frisky, and I just hope you deleted the screenshots because it's a bit personal.
You're spoiling everything. You're spoiling the process. Damn it.
What?
Anyway, let's get on to some of our favorite TIA posts from the past week. Our first one here is from Facebook actually, and our OP is Hayabusa 1138. I'm guessing you're a fan of THX 1138, possibly,
or maybe he just really likes motorbikes.
Well, possibly. But anyway, the title of the post here is "Cosplaying as Drow is totally problematic." And we have a picture of...
I think this is the post that I picked out.
Yeah.
Yep, this is what Mr. Shitlord has picked out for us. And this is a picture of some people cosplaying as, well, drows, of course, from D&D.
Basically, all you need to know about drows is that they're elf characters that have white hair and black skin.
Pretty apt
Anyone
summary.
who's seen Community and remembers the D&D episode, it's what Senior Chang went as.
Yeah, I don't watch Community. So.
Anyway, if anyone gets that mental image, it's that's what Senior Chang was.
Well,
yep.
Hopefully that'll help some people out. But anyway, and it's just a picture of, I guess, R.A. Salvatore here with 3 people cosplaying drows, and this little commenter here says, "Are you personally offended by this, Andrew, or are you offended on behalf of someone else who may or may not have a different opinion? Drow, black-skinned elves with white hair, have been a part of D&D since 1987, and Bob Salvatore made his fame by making one into a hero." And a couple comments down, it says, from the person who I'm guessing is offended here, "Blackface. Even if it's for Drow, it's just not cool. I get that people love the Drow, but seriously, not cool."
So just to clarify that first bit, are you personally offended, was by someone calling out the person who posted it. The person saying blackface for Drow's not cool is the guy who posted it saying, "Looks like Wizards fucked up." Because I think the point here is it's blackface and it's not nice.
Even though, it's supposed to be against, a fictional race.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or not even against, more like just, hey, I am a fictional race. Check out my awesome costume and crossbow.
It's like that
longbow,
post earlier in the week about how white girls can't cosplay as purple-skinned Homestuck characters, even though ethereal purple demons are not a race.
Was that Homestuck, or was that from Steven Universe? I saw one from Steven Universe also.
I didn't know that they had a large fandom yet to start cosplaying. I thought that was a new show.
Yeah,
it is, but it's gotten a lot of attention, mostly because
it's part
the
with
person
Adventure
who's
Time, right?
running the show. Yeah, I think so. I think Rebecca Sugar is her name that's running it. I could be very well mistaken here, but it's the first Cartoon Network show to be headed up by a woman, so that's why, of course, Tumblr's giving it a ton of attention. I mean, it's not a bad show by any means. It's pretty good actually, but I think that's the reason why, because finally sticking it to the patriarchy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Get educated
We need more.
shitlords.
We need more proud, independent Wymans. Just
We need more
I mean,
proud,
I'm kinda more-
independent, more proud, independent purple women who don't need no
Yeah.
reality. I don't know.
But the thing
It's-
about
perfectly fine.
this post that got me interested is that it made me think about how, like, when it comes to, like, Tumblr, there's just no historical context. There's just, they hear, like, the phrase, oh, blackface, it must be this. Or any type, it's just, or with, like, the cultural appropriation topic, it's anything that they remotely heard, oh, I heard that these people do this. Oh my god, these other people are doing something similar. They must be culturally appropriating them, or
and but the
this
whole
must be that
idea,
thing.
the whole idea of cultural appropriation is stupid because it's like you're not debasing a culture by doing stuff that's inherent to it. If anything, you're celebrating it. Like, I don't know if they're one of their arguments is even by speaking another language, you're appropriating a culture,
Yeah.
which is ridiculous. It's like, and they always like to use Japan as an example, which is funny because thousands of years ago, Japan they were just Chinese people who went onto an island.
And that's the thing, because I am a proud person of color, as I am Asian. I am part Japanese, and a slew of other Asian.
I should
But
check my
I
privilege,
always think
shouldn't I?
it's funny. Yeah. I always think it's funny when it. To me personally, I get a kick out of just whenever I see it. Any of them talk about Japan or talk about the Japanese people on their behalf, or just like that other Tumblr. It's like, I think it's like Japanese because fuck you or something. It has that like woman in like geisha clothing like sticking up the middle finger.
I think that's Asian because fuck you.
Yeah, something like
actually.
that. But and I think about like all the time all their posts, every time on Tumblr, it's always like they're speaking on behalf of us, or like, we like to apologize or any of that, and they just group, and it's weird because there's a lot of tension between different Asian cultures, like the Chinese, Japanese, Korean. They're not on like good terms sometimes. Like there's a lot of like, it's possible for a person of color to be racist too.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
it's
like,
just like-
case in point, if we're going to use Japan, I mean, the Japanese discriminate against ethnic Koreans living in Japan. It's,
Yeah,
but
is not,
Pox can't
great.
Pox can't be racist against each other. Racism is a completely white thing, like.
Yeah, it's just so funny when it's just hilarious how the definition that they always, it's so, I saw someone talk about this in a comment, but it's so American centric. Like everything is from the American viewpoint.
Exactly,
It's
and that
never.
and that's what frustrates me as an Australian is because like you have people saying, I don't want to dwell on it, but they're like, oh, don't be worried about Robin Williams when there's people dying in race riots. But in Australia we don't have race riots, so can't I mourn Robin Williams? That
Yeah,
actually that was a very
definitely
funny
such a
thing.
Weird.
You go on.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay, well, there was a friend of mine had a really weird experience, funny experience, I guess. He was doing like an orientation thing at uni for like her first years, and it was Native American themed. So the leaders had, feathered, the big feathered headdresses, and all of the first years had like just a band with a feather in it. And they were having a good time. There was nothing racist. It was just the headgear. But some SJW on campus came up to them and said, "You can't be wearing that stuff. That's racist. That's cultural appropriation. It might offend someone." And my friend's comment was, "Yeah, all the Native Americans that live in Australia."
Yeah, it's certainly. It's quite interesting when it becomes like. It never leaves America. Even stuff that happens in, like Europe, it's always like lumped in with like this American first person perspective. And I just think it's funny as someone who's Asian. It's like it's never thought of like especially when Avril Lavigne released that music video, and there are a lot of people in like that was actually made. Like I think there was like a video and someone was saying like was living in Japan and saying like you don't have to speak on behalf of us. That that music video is actually very popular in Japan. Avril Lavigne is actually a big figure in Japan. She's well liked. So like all the people are quote unquote speaking on behalf of us. Just stop. There's no you just don't understand it at all.
It takes it doesn't take context into account. Like,
Yes.
you know, it sort of just lumps it into sort of four categories. You've got proud black people, proud Latinos or A's or ats, whatever it is, and then you've got proud Asians, and then you've got white shitlords. But
Yeah,
it's much more
just
complex
white,
than that.
You know?
But it's like I don't know. I can use Australia as an example because, like, for instance, slavery didn't happen here. We've had our own problems. We've brutally oppressed our native population, which is terrible. It's a blight on our nation. But we didn't have slavery, and so when we are interacting with proud pox, it's not like we have to remember that we brutally oppressed them and forced them to work on the cotton fields. Other bad stuff happened, but it's a completely different context.
What was that just saying? It's like the sins of your father. Like, is it either it shouldn't pass down to the children or something?
Yeah, and then it gets even more complicated when I say, like, yeah, my grandfather was a Holocaust survivor. You know,
Yeah, and it's like, well, and it just becomes. I just think it's funny how it's like you have such staunch anti-racist. You know, like it's kind of funny with like Tumblr. And it comes to the big thing that I think about when I see other like people talk about TumblrInAction on other subreddits. I feel as though I'm right to kind of say, like, we're not against the idea of like equality or anti-racism. We're not for anything. We're not against like feminism, or we're all staunch, men's rights activists. We are talking about the Tumblr insanity. Like, it's TumblrInAction. We're talking about the insanity that happened on Tumblr.
And that's part of the problem, is that some of the things that SJWs talk about are legitimate things. There is sexism in our society. Minorities do get oppressed. There is stigma against people who are transgender. But they blow it to an extreme, which alienates people who want to help them, and just make people who are already against them, make them even more against them.
And it doesn't help when you bring in, when you talk about when they think that droll is like blackface. I mean,
exactly.
What is it?
You don't need to speak on behalf of a fictional race, unless you're otherkin.
Or fiction.
If we have anyone who identifies as drow, can we just have like some mitigation here? Like,
my kin type is drow.
My headmate identifies as a drow.
That would be a first, actually. I'd almost like to see that.
Yeah.
Although I have seen someone identify as an orc on Tumblr before.
That's the thing. Like, fiction kin is a thing. I identify as something that doesn't actually exist. It's pretty meta when you think about it. You're pretending you're something that doesn't exist. It's like, it's
not that it's more to exist, but when you think about it, it's another aspect that some of the fiction is like modern day fiction. Like, you could be born. They could have been born 10 years earlier before that work was published. It wouldn't have made any sense. Like, they wouldn't be that way, They say,
yeah,
it's like I feel it within me, It's like something I feel I was born this way, but it's like that, Harry Potter wasn't there. Like, if you were to go, 10 years before Harry Potter was published,
exactly,
I don't know what you would have identified as.
Well, my thing is, I think when people say they identify as stuff, I actually think, to an extent, it's kind of more of a, I would like to be a dragon. Let's be honest, being a dragon would be cool. But I would not go out and say, society's oppressing me because they're not letting me grow wings and fly around and breathe fire. Yeah.
And another thing that I want to say is another disclaimer. I'm not trying to beat down anyone who legitimately is. If you want to be that, that's totally cool. But as I said, when it comes to Tumblr, we're talking about people who say, "Oh, society oppresses me," because you know what? I am a polar bear kin, and that I just don't get enough representation in today's society. That's the stuff we're trying to talk about. Not I don't really care about if it's some teenager, or that's just. I mean, there are some funny moments where it's the planet kins or stuff. It's kind of hard not to laugh at that, but
yeah. I mean,
I'm not trying to say
it should just be.
I'm not trying to say, oh shit, kind of just speaking over each other.
I'll just be quick. I just think it's all right to have a healthy imagination and want to be something. I guess that's fine. But as soon as you start going around demanding rights for something that really, it's like when you say don't oppress otherkin. It's basically taking away from the seriousness of people who actually have proper disadvantages in society. It's like you're devaluing their struggle by trying to do the same thing for something that's a bit ridiculous.
Yeah, but as I said, like, I'm not trying to say you can't ever be another kin or can't do that. It's not more you can't, but there are just some things where it's like you can really tell when it's like on Tumblr when it's like off the rails, if it's or just like in case like with like feminism. I'm not against feminism. I just think it's funny that whenever you see on Tumblr any type of criticism towards the idea of modern day feminism, you are just shut down. You were cast out. You were called a neckbeard virgin, which is actually kind of like sex
That
shaming,
reminds
in my
me,
opinion.
man. I have to shave. Like, it's getting a bit bristly. But like, I do agree there. I'd say I would be confident in saying that the majority of people who go on and subscribe to TIA are not MRAs, but more likely to be feminists who are looking at what the people on Tumblr are doing and both being angry but also being really sort of like lighthearted about it.
Yeah.
Because I think the only way that any sort of social movement can do well is if it responds to criticism and evolves and remains relevant. If people on Tumblr want to make feminism into this, horseshoe symptom, really totalitarian worldview, then that's up to them. It's just not going to go anywhere. And so when you complain that you're alienating people,
Exactly. And that's the thing. Like, I feel as though we're kind of going off topic from the drow thing, but I just want to kind of finish on my point. Is that it's just personally like no idea is free from criticism. I will like any idea, like the idea of feminism, equality. Those are worth discussing. Those are worth back and forth. Those are worth looking at from different angles, really thinking about it. And I just hate. Like, my thing with, like, Tumblr is, and most modern day, like, online type activism is that there's no room for that. They say that, oh, no, we want to talk about feminism, but we have to talk about our type of feminism. The stuff that, like, we talk about, like, all MRAs are, like, red pillars, even though, like, and I'm not trying to, like, put full defense.
I totally agree. The thing is that how can you expect feminism to be taken seriously if it can't respond to criticism?
Especially online, and I think it's funny how they talk about, well, that's just an online minority. But when you think about how connected we are with the internet, I'm kind of surprised you're just casting that aside as like, oh, that's just a thing that's happening,
Yeah, when someone on Tumblr says kill all men, it shouldn't affect you because it's just one person, like... And if we really want to achieve Godwin's law, Hitler was just one person. He said stuff. Yeah. It only took us 20 minutes to get there.
Alright, then I guess we can start moving on to the next post.
Yep. I suppose we can move on, and this is the Vorsi's post of choice. And this is another one from Facebook. The OP here is Sugar Hooves, and the post title is Literally Blind to Race? Check Your White Privilege. And I really hate that I don't remember the name of this guy, but it's a blind dude who has a YouTube channel where he talks about what it's like to be blind for those of us who aren't.
Oh, his name is Tommy Edison.
Sweet,
yeah,
awesome.
I just looked it up.
Anyway, so there was a little image set posted to a large science community on Facebook, apparently, from what the Imgur link says, and it's just him telling his story. It's like, people always say, God, it must suck to be blind. My God, how do you do it? Oh, you poor guy. It's true, but you know what? There are plenty of good things about being blind. I go on airplanes first. I get VIP treatment at amusement parks. Never have to worry about drinking and driving. I don't have to do my own lawn. My electric bill is lower than yours. I ride the train for half fare, sometimes even free. Every single woman I've ever been with is a 10. I don't have to watch somebody age. You know what's cool about being blind? There's no race. I don't know from beauty. I don't know people from what it comes out of their mouth and what's in their heart. That's how I know people. It's very cool that way. And there's a little comment here that says, this is awesome except for the bit about being blind to race. Literally or not, coming from a white guy. Otherwise, good post.
Yeah. And that's the issue. It's like, even though this guy has literally no capacity to, like, figure out what race is, he must be racist. I mean, you have to think about this. If he's blind, and if no one told him the concept of races, he'd just think everyone is exactly the same.
Yeah.
So the idea of and also it's ableism because he's blind and they're discriminating against him. So it's funny because it's like even when you're at such a like disadvantaged position in society, you're still the shitlord.
And I think it's funny that it's even deep back to that point is that he has no concept of a lot of things. Like in terms of visually, it's like there is no concept at all. Like a lot of people are thinking like he may have like we can maybe explain it, but like technically there's just no idea what it is. Like a guy, like what is that in his mind? You know, he only has, you know, it's like as like he's I think it was like blind from birth, was it? But he only has there's only so much information you can get from like touch or like sounds and stuff. Like even this idea of like what a human looks like or is kind of foreign to him. So it's kind of funny that it's like they bring in like, oh, he's a white guy. Like I don't even think he knows what that is. Like
I mean, that's the
I don't
thing.
even think that really comes. Like does he even know like what that even is? Like that phrase, like, oh, you're just a black guy or you're just a white guy. It's like what is a guy in the first place? You know.
I mean, that's
brings up
the
a good
thing.
point.
It's a beautiful post, and it's saying, you know, this is not a disadvantage, which is one thing that Tumblrites should be great about. It's like, yeah, we're getting past our disability. And then the second thing is he's saying, I don't care about race. Isn't that where they want white people to be? That racism is just not a thing?
Actually, I will say, that phrase is kind of when it goes to, I kind of want to save this for when we talk about the third post, so I'll let it slide.
But I think
anyway,
I think something else about it though is that there's this weird thing that SJWs do that they sour something that's really lovely with, oh yeah, this is great, but just remember he's still a racist. Yeah,
he's still a white cis het male.
Yeah, and it's that, you know, you can't help being born white, straight, and male as much as you can help being born black, demisexual, and transgender. Like,
and it's also funny. It's back to that American perspective. It's like they're thinking like he's just a white guy in America, but it's like, what if he was just like, it's like, oh, this is a white guy. But what if you didn't know where he's from? He's a white guy from like who's born in like, Africa or something. It doesn't.
Yeah. Like, I mean,
like, it doesn't make any sense when you get down to it.
I mean, there's white slums in South Africa, and I would hardly say that Russians are inherently privileged, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. But there's also a point to be made. Do blind people really know, or will they be able to understand the concepts behind white privilege?
I think so. I mean, you could just say like there are certain people that where, I mean, I understand the idea of privilege in itself is one that it's not that like an insane one. I mean, that's the thing. It's like Tumblr just takes it too far. But the idea is, you know, there is something that, like, there is you know, a large homogenous group of people do kind of have a better chance in like in a country like America. Like there is. You could explain that.
I don't know. I could weigh in. I mean, I think the thing about white privilege is that it's in many ways sort of just luck of the draw. If the dominant world hegemony was Asian, then it'd be Asian privilege. It's not good. Like, white people have done bad things, and they continue to do bad things. It is true that because American culture is the most prominent in world society, that white culture, white ideas are very prominent. But it doesn't mean that, like the quote that racism is exclusively a white thing, you know?
Oh, yeah, exactly.
It's not as if when the British like landed in Africa, they go, right, what are we going to do? We're going to disseminate sexist ideals. Yeah. That's not what they were setting out to do. Like, it's not like the white race is predisposed to going around and making life bad for everyone.
That's the kind of thing I was gonna like. The idea, the idea of of privilege in itself is a sound idea. But the thing is that when it comes to like SJWs and like now, they make it solely, it's just white people, and it's just American white people. There's no, it's just tunnel vision. It's all just American white males. That's it, and they're all lumped into this one thing. That's solely that. That's where privilege goes to. That's only them.
Which is funny because they also say stuff like, don't lump all Asians into one category because you've got, Indians, you've got Koreans, you've got Chinese, Japanese, Pakistanis.
I don't know, you'd be surprised sometimes, how, Korean, Japanese, Chinese are usually lumped into one. Whenever, on, Tumblr, I mean, in terms of posts, whenever they talk about Asians, it's usually only about, Chinese, Japanese, Korean.
Yeah.
And never do they realize the tensions between all those three.
And I think we've touched on it before, but interesting story from my childhood is I grew up in a place I grew up in a very Japanese suburb of Sydney. The neighbouring suburb was predominantly Chinese. So I went to a school there was mostly Asian kids, a fair amount of white kids. This is Australia. We're white. There was a good mix of kids. There were people from all different backgrounds. And I remember that I was having a conversation with my Asian friends, and they were giving me shit because my family didn't own a wok. It's such a ridiculous thing, but they're like, oh, everyone needs to have a wok. Woks are important.
No, but here's the thing. They weren't being racist. They were being prejudiced because they don't have power. It's just prejudice. So your personal experiences don't count because you're white. You get it?
Yeah. You're right. I'll just check my privilege again.
Yeah.
Checked a few times today.
That bullying you experience, it doesn't even matter because you're white.
In fact, I'd like to apologize for it. It was obviously me and my white masculine presence that forced these proud people of color to discriminate against me. So I guess I'm to blame.
It's totally not victim blaming, you guys. Totally.
And victim blaming, that's not something we want to do, right?
Yeah. Okay, then. Are we going to move on to the next post?
I suppose we can move on to the last post. The OkCupid find. Amazing. From Lancashire. I believe that's how you pronounce the name. Apologies if I royally fucked that one up. And we'll let this lead into our discussion of social justice warriors that we've encountered outside of the internet. So we'll just go ahead and talk about this OkCupid summary. Queer, trans, non-binary, not a girl, go away. Pretty sure just from that alone we can see where this is going.
I know, I'm getting turned on. Keep going.
I do not hang with people who are not feminists. I do not hang with straight males.
Done.
I do not hang anyone who is not outwardly anti-racism, anti-bigotry, anti-oppressive, and in a mindset where they can openly, constantly be critical of themselves and their words/actions. Well, sounds like a keeper.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm doing with my life. Being a feminist, recording an EP, baking, sugaring. What is sugaring?
I don't know. I hope that's not a weird sex thing.
I have no idea. Someone go to Urban Dictionary real quick.
Huh. I don't know. When I look
drinking.
at sugaring, it's a form of hair removal. That's it.
Okay, well.
Well, I learned something today.
Instead of waxing, you use sugaring, which is more gentle.
Well, today we learned.
Yeah.
Anyway, drinking, smoking too much, ordering pizza, unlearning, relearning, challenging stereotypes.
Can I just clarify? This is what she does with her life, is just ordering pizza, right?
I guess.
I thought that was one of her
smoking
triggers, that she's triggered by ordering pizza.
No idea. Smoking too much. That's gotta be bad for your health. Ugh. Well, then again, I know we have some chronic smokers on TumblrInAction, so apologies to you guys.
Yeah, 420 blaze it,
of course,
guys.
You are oppressing them right now.
Blaze it. Anyway, let's see. Defining my gender, being head over heels in overzealous love with my best friends, pretending to entertain conversations with males who are threatened by me, and posting screenshots of their messages on my blog for everyone to laugh at. Well, who's doing the laughing now?
Yeah, joke's on you.
Ha ha ha.
We now have the
I'm-
high horse. We're the ones making fun of you, even though that seems a bit backwards.
But you know, guys, just deep down, we're actually threatened by her because her strong femininity is actually overriding our white, patriarchal.
I became white, apparently.
Yeah, yeah. Can I just clarify? You've become white because you disagree with the SJWs. That's just a thing.
I became white, apparently.
Yeah.
There, collect your honorary white privilege.
Do you have a desire to eat cheese and oppress black people?
Well, I do like cheese.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's
who
what I
doesn't?
thought, shitlord.
Honestly.
My kidneys don't like cheese, unfortunately enough, but I do. So
Your
I'm at war with
your
them constantly.
kidneys just have internalized misogyny. That's all.
Internalized lactose intolerance. Anyway, I'm really good at bruising the male ego through constant merciless rejection.
That doesn't sound like bullying.
Not at all. The first things people usually notice about me, they don't.
Aww.
Wow,
Ouch.
that's awful.
It's not really an
The
answer.
6 things, but they typed it there, so I guess we're gonna have to take it. The 6 things I could never do without: coffee and dogs and partial knowledge of many things.
Can I just clarify? That's like 3 things, but I just remembered that numbers are a tool of the patriarchy, so that's all right. Can we keep going?
Maybe it's partial knowledge of 4 things, and 4 is just many for them.
Yeah. Oh, they're just using the right pronoun.
I guess I have no idea. What would those 4 things be though?
I don't know. Well, they've already mentioned coffee, so I guess Starbucks is out of the question.
Too many white people.
Supernatural, Doctor Who, Sherlock, and Homestuck.
All those fandoms and
I'll take it. I spend a lot of time thinking about why do dudes continue to message me despite many clues in my profile. Also the harmful effects of privilege, capitalism, dietism, I think that's how you pronounce
I
that.
don't even know what that is.
Binarism. I have no idea either. Binarism and masculinity in general.
Wait a minute. Well, I like that. Wait, are they binaries like binary thinking type?
Yeah.
Wait.
So basically,
oh my God.
ones and zeros.
That is very ironic. Not gonna lie.
So basically that means ones and zeros oppress her. So how does she use a computer? Does she change it so it's I don't know, 4s and 7s because they're more feminine numbers?
It's in a totally different base.
She uses C plus equals. On a typical Friday night, I am watching Sabrina the Teenage Witch.
That's fine.
I actually like that show.
Can't really argue
grew up with that show.
Grew up with it after all.
I like that.
The most private thing I'm willing to admit: I don't trust dudes, and I am sex negative.
Although I do
shaming
argue
me right
against
now.
that being a private thing because I think it's made fairly obvious that she doesn't like dudes.
Well, it really gets complicated here because they're looking for everybody ages 21 to 28 near me for new friends, short-term dating, and casual sex. Sex negative and looking for casual sex.
That's quite
Yeah,
interesting.
but-
I'll say
but-
because a lot of when you see those like sexy negative feminists, are they on the side of casual sex? A lot of them are kind of anti-kink too. Excuse me,
Oh, yeah,
anti-kink
that-
too.
I've never understood that either. It's are they going to be the hardcore religious zealots in regards to sex? You can only have consensual sex in the missionary position in the dark.
I think it's
with your
because their
spouse.
perception is that kinks and BDSM is inherently damaging to
Yeah, that's kind of the big
femininity, ignoring the fact that women are often the dom in that sort of
No, and
thing.
also the fact that with the BDSM, consent and the question, that's and trust is such a big thing. And it's just insane how they think all those BDS, it's all just men just trying to meet their fantasy of beating their own girlfriends and stuff, and even the girls are all brainwashed into wanting to be hurt or beaten or choked or whatever and stuff. But it's just such a weird there's no idea that you could truly consent to it. There is no form of consent when it comes to BDSM. It's only for oppression. It's only for hurting other females.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
It's like spankings. Who doesn't like a spanking every now and again? Oh, that's punishment.
I
Yeah.
spanked myself before we
So-
started the show.
I thought the reason I was going on the show was because I was promised some spankings.
We'll get to that afterwards. Anyway, for those of you who haven't,
We're
suddenly
starting a new
tuned out,
TAA podcast gone wild for those
Yeah.
who are in the know.
we'll give you some details about that later if you know what I'm talking about.
I'll give you a peek of my chocolate thunder from down under, guys.
Wow.
Anyway, so you should message this person if you want to buy me a drink or let me pet your dog. Huh.
Oh,
So in
That's
addition
nice.
to ordering pizza, they drink too much.
I am a dogkin anyway, so
Well, that I was gonna
Well,
segue
that
into that.
works.
Is that I was worried that she might misgender my dog. That if she patted him, she'd assume that he was male, when my dog actually identifies as a planetkin. So
With male pronouns, no less.
yeah,
But my God, this is. I don't know what to say. Like I'm not on OkCupid, but I've been seeing a lot of posts of people on there featured on TumblrInAction and talking to some of the people off site.
oh
It-
yeah.
It seems like these types of people are like starting to come up in massive numbers now, or at least just more so than before.
Well, no,
I think-
it's not really. I see it as more like now that it's becoming bigger, like it's kind of more like, oh, you could just start like, oh, I'll just put that on my profile because that's what I do now. It's like it's become like it's kind of like a fad, and I was like, oh, I do this now because it's big and well known.
Another thing about OkCupid, which is interesting, is that there's a huge disparity between men and women on it, which I think SJWs look at as a good thing anyway, because as women, they can have a huge amount of power and just, like, shit around other guys. Not that I think SJWs are out to actually go, who can I, which men can I, get to check their privilege today? But there is a bit of that in that they can afford to say ridiculous stuff on OkCupid because there's just an influx of desperate guys who are willing to do weird shit,
It's a little bit out there. I mean, I'm not really familiar with the OkCupid and online dating crowd.
I mean, the thing about OkCupid is it's free, so it tends to attract maybe not the best clientele.
Well, certainly from this post, it's very interesting. But I guess that really transitions to our topic of discussion.
Yep, our topic really inspired by this social justice warriors that we've met outside of the internet.
Ooh.
What experiences have we had? And I know both you guys have some pretty amusing stories. So
Yeah.
whoever wants to start.
I guess I can go. Like this is pretty much it's not it's kind of like SJWs in the outside world, but it's more of like pretty much it's how I never attended a single day of class in an anthropology course I signed up for, and I passed with a B+ solely on knowledge I learned on TumblrInAction. And this is I signed up for the class. This is in college, by the way. I signed up for the class, and it's just talked about like it was just the title was just anthropology, and it was like multiculturalism and women's rights. I was like, oh, that's quite interesting. It's like the first anthropology class that you see on the schedule list. And then I sign up for it. It looks relatively simple. I come to the first day. I went to class for like the only like first few 3 times. But it started off kind of normal. Like, it started talking about, like, humans, how we build as cultures, something worth studying for, why we look into the subjects. And then after that, it just delved straight into, like, white privilege, cultural appropriation, which I still wonder why that was lumped into, like, multicultural and women's rights, but cultural appropriation. And this was around the same time when I found TumblrInAction as a subreddit, and after browsing through that site, I learned up kind of with the jargon to just kind of keep up with the subreddit. and I was just surprised that like, wow, everything that they're talking about, I've already learned. Like, and the funny thing is that uh, there was a small textbook for this class which I actually bought, and we never even looked into it. I don't even know why they suggested we buy it, but and it just got. And the reason I stopped going to class was the class was podcasted. You can listen to the audio and look at the lecture slides. So it was like during the week of like midterms. This class is pretty simple. There was like 2 tests and a discussion class you go to. But I'm looking through the podcast, and then I start to see like everything just mirrors what I see on like TumblrInAction. Like it's going in depth with like privilege uh and certain like psychology terms which I've already learned because I took an AP psychology class in high school. So I was able to ace the midterm, and we go to like the week of the final. I'm just like the podcast. I have like every class lecture, which are like I think the class was like an hour, and I'm just skipping through it. Like I'm like, okay, I already know that. I already know about cultural appropriation. Oh, privilege. It's like racism equals privilege plus power, and it's all just talking about like white people. And then I get to the final. I passed that. And the reason I got a B plus is because you were supposed to go to the discussion groups, and that was like 10% of your grade, and I never went to those. I was pretty lazy when it came to discussion classes or discussion groups. But all that time I kept thinking, so when is this going to be about anthropology? Like when is this going to be about multiculturalism? Like I thought we were going to learn more like about studying humans and stuff, but I was just kind of thrown off by like, wow, there's a lot of like race theory in this class. And I remember one of my roommates was taking this class, and he was I really loved his reaction after like a few weeks in the class. Like, man, this class is just every lecture I just come out thinking, wow, so the cause of all the problems in this world are just white people, are because of them. So I thought that was quite interesting.
Yeah, I mean that is a thing. Is it's like people talk about these views on Tumblr being a minority, but they're steadily influencing more mainstream things. And I mean,
it's definitely coming. It's been big in like academic theory, but it's now really coming into full force.
I don't know. I mean, props to you for coming out of that experience sane.
No, I mean it wasn't that bad, but it's just like. It was a bit jarring, I mean, there's a part of me that's like, some of the stuff was quite when you look at the ideas I presented, like the idea of privilege, and it's like it's an interesting topic and worth learning, I think. But when it kind of delved into those moments where it's like, oh, it's white people, like you'd always put that focus back onto just white people, and I was like, that's wow, of course.
Yeah, but I think to an extent is that like, particularly in America, and I guess to an extent here, is there's a bit of a it's almost like it's not a victim complex, it's like a guilt complex. Like,
oh yeah,
I mean, yes, bad things have happened, and as white people, it is one's responsibility to like recognize that. But you don't need to be like speaking on behalf or like actively trying to say white people are bad and we should all like feel bad. It's kind of like how they talk about rape culture, and the idea of a rape culture is actually negative because it shames people who have done nothing wrong and allows legitimate rapists just to go, oh, well, it's the culture, ignoring the fact that rape is a terrible thing that's done by individuals and not by an entire society. It's the same sort of thing. Yeah. White people do bad things, but not all white people are racist. Not all white people work to destroy the world.
Yeah, especially, and it's kind of funny. It's one thing to acknowledge privilege in its idea, but I've even seen a few like people that I know on Facebook, and some of them are kind of like into that stuff, but there have been a few posts that I've been reading recently due to I kind of didn't want to bring up the Mike Brown case, but a lot of them have been going, I apologize on behalf of white people. And I just keep like, you don't have to bear any guilt of that. Like it sounds weird, but it's like it's one thing to acknowledge like, oh, what a very terrible, what a very terrible event, but it's just to just put it back. It's like I'm so sorry for like as a white person, like, and they're being very earnest, and like they shouldn't have to bear that guilt. Like I don't. It's like it's just kind of saddens me. Like they shouldn't have to bear those thoughts or that
Because
type
the
of
thing
burden almost.
is that ironically, I think when people do that sort of self-degradation, that it actually invites reverse racism. And people who say reverse racism isn't a thing are wrong. And it really shouldn't be called reverse racism because it implies that...
It is.
Because,
it certainly implies something. Oh, shit. I got 1 second.
Yeah.
Phone call.
You go get the phone. Maybe me and Hat can keep going.
We'll figure something out.
Yeah.
I guess I can go ahead and tell my story since it's relatively short.
Yeah, may as well.
Friend of mine is trans, and I knew her as a guy through most of my life, or at least the years that I knew her, and to find out after I think a year or two of college that she had come out as trans. And I was like, okay, fine. It's going to take me a little while to adjust to pronouns and stuff, and I'm probably going to screw up once or twice on here, so apologies in advance if that upsets her if she's listening. Well, then again, this whole story might, but whatever. Anyway, so she got on Tumblr, and I was following her for the longest time.
Oh, that's creepy.
Things were okay.
Were you? That sounds almost like stalking her.
Not like that. Like a Tumblr. You know what I mean, you asshat.
Don't try and
anyway.
Don't try and misappropriate his digital culture kin down with patriarchy.
I am a white male shitlord.
Hashtag yes all women.
But anyway, so the story goes that she's on Tumblr for a lot, basically, doing the whole Tumblr thing, reblogging stuff all the time, telling her views on various subjects, and, that sort of thing. And it gets to the point where some of the social justice topics regarding, trans people, queer people, etc., come up, and she's exposed to it through some of the people that she's following. And her stance on it at the time is, this is ridiculous. How dare people imply that, you can't be, or you can't have like a intense hatred of, cis people that's on the same level as like transphobia, because all it is just hating someone for the sheer fact that they identify as this. And, we get along. And fairly recently, within like the last couple of months, really, she's sort of been going off the rails into the more radical territory. Like, no, there is no such thing as a cisphobia. Everyone needs to be absolutely aware of their white privilege at all times. Like, even if you're passing by a person of color on the street, God, I hate that term, but if you're passing by a non-white person on the street, you need to be aware of your white privilege, and they may, be afraid of you. And, same goes for men. And she really pushed the whole Schrodinger's rapist point of view really hard.
Oh, God.
And
that's such a brilliant term. But it cuts really close to the bone because it's a perfect, it's what it is. Like, keep going, but I just love that Schrodinger's rapist.
But it just got to the point where I just had to cut her out of my life like entirely, and it was terrible. Like, I mean, she was cool for the longest time, and we were friends all through like the last year of high school and like the first couple of years of college. We talked regularly. And then this shit, and I'm just like, God, I really hate that this social justice nonsense has claimed a good friend of mine. it really sucks to lose people you care about to this sort of ideology.
Yeah.
It really sucks.
Because it is it's very predatory, this SJW mindset. Like, I don't know, I think the reason why it's just so successful, for lack of a better term, is because if you're not with them, you're a shitlord, you know? Like, because there's no black
You're
or
not
white.
with us, you're a terrorist.
Yeah, it's like you can't be a feminist and say that, trans with a little asterisk is devaluing, social justice. As soon as you say that, you become a member of the homogenous far right who's out to destroy femininity. Like there's no room for criticism or debate or a grey area. It's either all men are evil or let's oppress black people.
And not only that, with that no criticism thing, it's that they often talk about like, oh, you just got to get educated and learn the right facts. Like your criticisms aren't even criticism. They're just you don't understand.
And it's the other thing. They're like, you can't talk about trans people because you're not trans. Let them talk. You can't have an opinion. You need to rely on them to present it.
You can't talk about racism if you're white, as if that means anything.
Yeah. But that's not racist, guys. That's
Totally not.
Never. Alright then, I guess this is the now new TumblrInAction podcast support group where we talk about our past woes.
Well, I mean, I've already talked about my friend who had the Native American Indian debacle, but I don't know. I guess it fits into that more Americo-centric thing. Is that it's not as big of an issue here. I mean, you get it filtering through because Tumblr's a global website and most teenage girls in Australia use Tumblr, but it's not as big of an issue. We don't have to an extent. I mean, there are some things. Like I did last time I went to Sydney Uni, there was that famous, bake sale for equality thing. It was something like that.
God,
it was
yes.
It was Jaeger bombs for equality, which I think that's a very nice way of reevaluating it in an Australian context. But it was like $5 for men, $3 for women, $2 for transgenders, and it's like, I don't know. It's the idea that feminists want equality, but their way of getting equality is to sort of, what's the word? I don't know, like punish men. So you have to punish them significantly first before you can get equality. And it doesn't work that way.
If I want to say one thing, it's like I keep saying like disclaimers, but personally, I personally don't think it's like that hashtag not all men or not all feminists. This is really just that internet variety, like how this is like what is transformed. It's that internet community, and not to say like feminism in itself, there are legitimate efforts, there are legitimate causes, but when it comes to like if your platform is on Tumblr, it's like if you're building your platform on reblogging stuff on Twitter, it's like I don't know if that's really like I don't know if you're the same people to start saying, well, you're not a real feminist,
Exactly, it's not activism.
It's so weird, and there's no room for discussion for that type of stuff. You're just considered a MRA neckbeard.
That's the thing. The real feminists are the women going out there and working hard and getting jobs and showing men that they can do better, the same or if not better than men in their fields. You're not going to get anywhere by sitting on a social media site and whinging that you can't get a job in science because men are too powerful. If you really want to make a difference, what you do is, you study hard, you work hard, you keep your head up, and then that'd be the perfect way of showing how the patriarchy is dumb, by going out there and
not only
beating
that,
their own
you
game.
can also do different efforts in terms of like outside of online, or even trying to build a more positive online community. But if you talk about trying to be more positive or more level-headed sounding, you're accused of tone policing, and
Exactly.
That's a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when I see the sign for, Jaeger bombs for equality, I think that is actually better than... I know it's ridiculous, but I think it is actually better than stuff on Tumblr, because although, yes, it's ridiculous, at least someone's going out there in the real world, putting themselves on the line and making a statement. the statement might not be particularly productive. Oh, they love that word productive, don't they? But I think that's more meaningful, because at least it's making you think. It's not just someone being like, oh yeah, I don't like men because I don't get asked on dates. But if I did get asked on dates, that would be sexist, because it's like I have no autonomy and fuck the patriarchy. Like,
or you get someone like Misandry Mermaid, and it's like, in a sense, they talked about themselves as like they're speaking for a lot of modern day feminists, and it's like I don't think that's true. You know, it's like isn't there a moment? It's like, has anyone ever said, you know, I don't think that you're really representing the movement that well, you know?
Yeah, it shouldn't be about attrition. No social movement should be about punishing anyone. It should be about working forward. I mean, that's something they teach you in law school, is that the best way to prevent crime or to prevent injustice is not through punishment, but through rehabilitation and prevention. And you should apply that to a political context, where the best thing to do is not to try and redefine the rules to make sure people feel bad about something they may or may not have done. It's about moving forward to try and get some change that everyone will be happy with.
Wow,
exactly.
Very nice. I
Yeah.
guess
it's a bit
that
dry,
was very
though.
nice to say.
I think you have to take that with a pinch of salt, guys, because I am a CIS white male, so nothing I can say is going to be accurate. It's me just trying to oppress. I'm trying to oppress women again. I'll just check my privilege, Sorry.
I guess one other funny story that I have is I took a sociology class, and the professor, she it was like a regular, like this one, not like the anthropology class, like actually learned about like other sociology, but she sprinkled in wonderful moments of just how even she says she made like disclaimers like, I may be a little bit, some of people have told me I'm a bit too liberal, and that I must, I've been called names that I'm some like communist or socialist, but but personally I'm an anarchist. But it's like, let me just preface this by saying that a lot of these are my opinions, but I think it does fit within the the coursework, which it kind of did. But one thing that I really thought was hilarious for her, in which she made the distinction that everything is a social construct. Everything. Science, social construct. Biological sex, social construct. Gravity, because science is a social construct, gravity is a social construct. And she was so passionate that. And
gravity is a social construct. Hey guys,
that's almost philosophical.
Yeah, dude, that's out of this world. Can we just
she
stop?
Described it. Oh, what was
if we stop believing in gravity, maybe we can all just float, and then we can be up with the Pluto kin.
But it was just, the thing is, I kind of understood her point of view, because she had said, because science changes with new discoveries, does that mean it's like it was her setup kind of made sense, but it was her conclusion that just was, I was just laughing and was baffled by it when she said that science, because we're always learning new discoveries, there's always something learning, we're always learning something new that may just, take place of an old theory. We may have a new theory with a new body of evidence. That means that science is just a social construct. That means it's ever changing. It's not objective. And I was just like, wow. I mean, science is not objective. And then one of my favorite things.
But this is the thing: is that
as no, actually, you can go.
It's just like I think that it's good that she has, not the guts per se, but the way that she's presenting her views is not malicious. She's not trying to force anyone to change her views. She's got, in a very Englishy sort of way, she's got a thesis. She's applying it to stuff. It works. It's very postmodern, but it's not hurting anyone, and it's not inherently negative.
Something. I mean, there were a few moments, I'll get to that, which it was kind of a bit negative, and I did discuss with her, and I kind of was able to get her point of view on this, which I actually kind of understood where she was coming from. One of my favorite things that she said was medicine is not objective. It's not an objective science. But her examples that she cited are just, just the she cited that well, speaking of medicine, you know how back then in like the early early 19th 20th century, you know, we didn't know about or late 19th century, we didn't know a lot about women's bodies. So, you know, where it's like, and this is the actual thing, like female hysteria, like they thought that like the woman was like crazy and they had to be, and they thought they thought a woman being emotional, like that could be fixed by giving a vaginal massage and pretty much just making them orgasm. It's like that was, and it's like, you see, that was considered medicine.
That being said,
Like,
that if when I'm stressed, I wouldn't mind a genital massage. Like, I'm just putting that out there. Like,
no,
the Victorians didn't have it all wrong.
But the thing is that it's like, because there were people who didn't understand this, that made the subject of medicine a social construct. Even though he was just totally disregarding like the historical, not only the historical context, the religious context. At one point, she talked about how, you know, homosexuality. She's like, my biggest example, homosexuality considered a mental illness for a long time by medicine. And I was just like, well, that had a huge religious context. Like, that wasn't because of medicine or because of science. That was because people like thought it was like a sin. They thought it was like from the devil. You know, they legitimately thought homosexuality was like, oh my god, it's like, you know, it's like, don't you realize that that's a sin? You know, it says so in the Bible. Like, if she really didn't get the context of why people were getting it wrong, and then she attributed that to like science and medicine itself. And another one was, and then I brought up, well, you know what? It's like, I kind of get your point of view, but what about like the people who are anti-vaccination? You know, like it's like that's not real. It's like I kind of brought that as kind of I can't remember why I brought that up, but then she said, well, I understand their point of view because, you know, back then, like part of why AIDS was spread back then was due to, you know, the polio vaccine in Africa. And it's like, but that's not a problem with medicine. That's because we didn't know about like the diseases. We didn't know, like, we learned more. We learned actual observable, you know, objective, like there's actual evidence and something concrete. And like it's just the way her conclusions were that it's all ethereal. You know, it's all just it's all just, there's no, like, she even made a stance like there's no such thing as objective truths. You know, there's not, even what we observe isn't even objective. Like, because of and it's like, wow, that is some deep philosophical shit. Like, she was going knee deep in some pretty interesting philosophy. And
so everything is the Matrix, basically.
Yeah.
Kind of
guys, that's a really good way to bring this round, because in the Matrix they offer you the difference between the blue pill and the red pill.
Oh god.
Okay, I kind of want to just finish it up by saying, like, it you know, some stuff was humorous, but the one thing that it was kind of not necessarily negative, but she made it a point to say she was really big on the whole racism is privilege plus power. But she went even farther to say racism is white people in power. And I even had a discussion with her saying, like, you know, like, I personally like to see, like, it's because she even then said anyone can be like, I was kind of floored when she said anyone can be prejudiced, but only certain people can be racist. So those experiences, if you've experienced prejudice, or if you think and she even said she said, and to those who are white in my class, if you've experienced what you think was racism, it was probably just prejudice. And because
holy shit.
Yeah, I was like, oh my god, like that's a little bit far. But I mean, I didn't want to say anything because I don't want to like cause any tension in the class, but you know, like,
I guess that is one issue about
uneasy.
That's one issue about stuff being taught at uni, is that if you speak out against it, that affects your grade and that affects, you know, your career.
Yeah.
So to an extent,
I mean, she really made it a point. I mean, in favor of her, like, she made a point that this was my opinion. Like, this is not like this is what I believe. You know, this is not something that I want you to learn or take, but like, this is personally. Like, she even said, like, I'll get on my high horse since we're talking about, you know, this, like, like in terms of, like social like institutions or social institute like actual stuff and like structures in America or like in how societies work. But then she'd add in like, oh well, what about talking about like racism and stuff. But then after class, I even said, I approached it saying, because personally I see it as like everyone can be racist, but there is such things as institutional racism in a sense that there are they can in like certain countries like you can see that anyway. It's not just a white person thing. And I even said like like coming like as someone who's Asian, like I could easily talk to you about like the tensions between Japan and like the other Asian countries, or like I can even talk about like in California going down to like I live in not too much personal information, but I live in the Bay Area, but like I could go down to like Chinatown and hear stories from people saying like they don't really trust black people, they don't really trust white people at all, and it's and I could and like they're like that's all clearly racist sentiments, but it's like no, that's just all prejudice, because they don't have power. And it's like,
Yeah,
as if prejudice is supposed to be even better.
Yeah.
And it's like, and
I just would like to call you out on that.
Saying, oh, okay.
Because I'm a prejudice kin, and the way you're talking about racism and stuff is oppressing me.
And I just summed it up by saying, so I kind of just want to just finish up my thought, and I just summed it up by saying, I understand like in terms of like institutional, I see it as institutional racism is power and prejudice. Because there is like power in that institution, but then she said, "Yeah, your definition's good, but the problem it's like I feel that detracts from white people. That detracts from white people too much. Because like with my definition, that puts racism solely on white people. And I'm like, wow, that kind of threw me off for a second. Like,
can I just ask you a question here? I mean, I know it's actually not good practice, SJW or not, to actually, value opinions regarding race. But was your teacher white?
Yes, she was.
Well, there we go.
Oh my god.
Yeah, she even said like, I mean, she was a great teacher. Very funny, very informative, very knowledgeable. But it's those little moments where she just went into that stuff, I was just like, my god. And at one point, she was talking about like going on some rant, and then she even like kind of singled out this one guy who it's like she was just talking about like, I know I get a lot of comments about so a lot of people say, oh, it's not all white people, and I know I got a few comments from you, pointed to a guy Travis in your one of your research papers. I noticed a little something there. And I was like, oh my god, that kind of felt awkward when she was like, I know that you want to defend all white people, but I was like, Jesus Christ, that's... At some points I did think it was like a little bit far, but I mean, the rest of the stuff was not too bad, though I still laugh when I think about that medicine and science is not objective at all. It's like, total like bare bone philosophy that there's no such thing as objective truth. There's nothing absolute in this universe.
It's way too postmodern for me, man.
Oh yeah. Philosophy meets.
It was like philosophy meets sociology meets
sociology. The word
meets heavy social justice, like knowledge.
All across the stars, the shitlords oppress quietly.
I thought it was interesting though that you brought. Oh man, I think about you brought up the red pill. I was like, I've actually been like reading through that subreddit the past few weeks just to like finally like look in what is about it, and it's kind of funny in that they talk about like regular like dating advice, like it's specifically red pill, and it's like some new age thing. Like they talk about how like I've seen people talk about how like it's like you're supposed to do stuff like they have. Not like it sounds weird saying it, but there's like a few aspects of the red pill which are like legitimate, like just but it's like common sense stuff, like oh, you should start exercising, take care of yourself. But I think it's funny that some of the stories that I see on the red pill that they use as like, oh, this is like proof that the red pill needs to be acknowledged, is that when you really look at the relationships, they were already unhealthy relationships. Like they were not the they were not the product of a feminist world. Like the people in this in those examples that they use are like not like they don't have the best qualities of people. Like some of them talk about how like, oh, you know, she was already unfaithful from the past, but due to my blue pill nature, I just didn't realize it. I should have. And they talk about like, well, I know that this feminist world destroyed my dad because, you know, when he lost his job, he just gave up on, you know, it sounds kind of a bit dark, but he just started giving up on being a father. And it's like, if he you know, if he had the red pill, and it's like, it's not really the red pill you needed. Like he kind of just went into like a depressed state. Like it doesn't have to be this new age philosophy of like, oh, red pill, blue pill. Like some of the stuff is like, they already had problems, and like them getting fixed has nothing to do with about like maintaining frame or like red pill. Like some of the stuff, like you have to be like, you have to like work on. It's hard to like say, but like you kind of have to be like, there's stuff you already have to work on, you know. It's kind of odd saying, but like it's just the framework of like the red pill. It's like it's always framed as this new age, like, oh man, this like we gotta take down this like feminist society. It's just like taking away so much from us.
But if we're gonna have another go at Godwin's law, excuse me, if we're gonna have another go at Godwin's law, you know, Hitler tried to present himself as an original political thinker, but he wasn't. He just used things that Nietzsche and Treitschke came up with. Treitschke's an actual guy. I'm not just making that up, but it is true. It's like. The interesting thing about the red pill is it is sort of diametrically opposed to SJW thought, but they're both very similar. They're both idea that they both blame all of their problems on a single homogenous group, which actually is not as bad as either side makes it out to be, or through their actions makes it as bad as it is. You know, like
I think
I also think it's funny that Tumblr thinks Reddit is like only r/atheism, r/the red pill, and r/TumblrInAction.
And I think it's so funny because it's like Reddit has R feminism, 2X chromosomes. It has
shit
SRS.
Reddit says.
It has shit Reddit says. It has the whole shit Reddit says community, like the whole like different sidebars of like SRS gaming, SRS everything, and it's like, and Reddit is always portrayed as some red pill MRA virgin neckbeard. It's hilarious. Like I don't get that. Like it's so weird the phrasing of it.
Oh well, it's their loss.
Never understand it.
They can't oppress with us, you know. Whatever.
Yeah.
But I will say on a side note, I find it kind of very like it's a little bit. I mean, known for their double standards, of course. But when I think about like they always include virgins as if like that's like I feel as though like that's very like very childish. Like it's one thing to say like, oh, they're just MRAs, but to say they're just they're just guys who never got laid, you know?
Yeah, because
that's kind of like a weird like middle school bullying tactic.
I guess, but that's the thing. It's like on the one hand, SJWs don't want to like have people judged on their sexual activity or lack thereof. But it's all right when it's men, you know.
Or it's all right when it's the other people. It's
exactly.
One thing, like it's one thing to be opposed to someone, you know, in ideas and ideology, but then they just take it a step further. Like, oh my god, they're male tears, virgin neckbeard type thing. Like, it's so deep with like this like character attack. They make this like caricature and just like that's what you guys all are. You guys are all just like social outcasts who never got laid? Like, what type of guy are you who's never gotten laid and stuff? And it's like you don't even know how to talk to women. And
if we want to sort
weird.
If we want to sort of wrap this up, I think something to think about is that both sides would do each other a great service if they both, you know, took a little bit of criticism and did a bit of put yourself in someone else's shoes, you know? Like if a red pillar legitimately thinks that feminism is why he can't have sex, then think about why that is the case. If an SJW thinks that this white guy is oppressing me, you know, like put yourself in his shoes. It's people need to be more respectful of others' beliefs.
That's just in general, and I think it's just kind of weird, but I feel as though this type of stuff just came with the quick rise of like the internet and how interconnected we could all be.
Oh, definitely.
It's just
Yeah, you can share all your ideas
you can
all
sh-
at
yeah,
once
you
and
can
with so
share
many
all your
people. I mean, like
ideas.
Tumblr's reblogging, for example. You don't even have to think for yourself anymore. Someone else can do it for you, and you can just reblog it, and suddenly it's your opinion.
Yeah. It's like this becomes you because you like it, you know?
Yep.
And maybe that's the real postmodernism.
But yeah, I mean, a
Well-
little empathy can go a long way.
True. Very, very true. Put yourself in someone else's shoes and walk a mile in them, and then you're a mile away and you have their shoes. No. Anyway, I believe that's where we're gonna have to wrap things up. So, any last thoughts, gentlemen?
Oh, I was just going to say it's been a pleasure, you know? And
Oh yeah, it's been great.
here's to more fun and very, very misogynistic podcasts, eh?
Many, many social justice.
Oh, I will say
shenanigans.
though, if there ever happened to be the topic of fat acceptance, which is probably one of my favorite of the SJWs, I kind of wish we could ever one day could talk about that, because there's just some fun stuff that I could just talk all day about.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's possible. We might. It just depends on if that becomes like a big topic of the week. But
Well,
anyway,
big because they're fat, like.
Oh, ha ha.
Haha, you
I
fat
didn't catch
shamer.
that one. Well done. Anyway, I've been the Hat 2, and this has been Vorsey
Yeah.
and Mr. Shitlord,
Yes.
and this has been a podcast.
Woo!
Hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Woohoo!
Hey guys, thanks for listening to the TumblrInAction podcast. If you'd like to be a guest host on a future podcast, please send me a message on Reddit, Tumblr, or Twitter. I'm known as the Hat 2 on all 3 platforms, so shoot me a message and we'll see what we can do about bringing you on. Again, thanks so much for listening. We'll see you next time.